Well, hey guys, this is Tommy Ellison with Senior Moments, my blog. I think this is called a podcast now to be hip. Sorry about that. It's not a blog. Take that back. It's a podcast. So everybody has podcasts these days. But welcome, and thank you for joining me. We're live at 5 with Senior Moments. And this is episode number 8. And I call this episode Mobs, Meatballs, and Murder. Or I guess I could have called it, at one time I thought about calling it Saved by the Bill. But you will understand why in just a moment. So if you will, stay with me and you'll understand why. So here we go. By the way, before we get started, I wanted to wish everybody, all you guys, a happy Father's Day today. I hope it's been a good one for you. My lovely wife, Sandra, gave me this T-shirt this morning, and it's called Papa, and that's my nickname for my grandkids. So we had a good time at church today, and it's been a good Father's Day. Actually, all the men sang in church today. It was kind of neat. I've always wondered why Philadelphia kind of seems to bring out the worst for me, because this story is about another trip to Philadelphia. If you were here last week, I told you a story about Frankie Bradley's sports bar and being confused, thanks to my friend John Chambers, with all-pro offensive guard for the Philadelphia Eagles, Jerry Sizemore. And if you watch that, you know what I'm talking about. If you didn't watch it, you can go back and catch it on the replay. We do this on Facebook and YouTube, so take your choice. But anyway, last week we talked about Jerry Sizemore and this kind of identity mix-up, I guess you would call it. And it was brought on by this friend of mine who just had this famous, he was just, what would you call it? He was fixated with introducing himself and then introducing others at the table, and I got introduced as Jerry Sizemore. So, and I also told you a little bit about the following night. We went to a little Italian restaurant in South Philly called Cousins, like C-O-U possessive S for like cousins, I guess. And he was the chef there at this Italian restaurant. And in this particular episode, though, the same restaurant, but a different time frame. I was back in Philadelphia. I can't honestly remember why I was there this time, but there were 2 other individuals with me at the restaurant. There was a friend of mine, Joe Beck, who was a manufacturer's rep for our company back then. And then, of course, John Chambers. And John had taken us to Cousins, and he was telling us about what a great restaurant this was, and, what a good reputation in a way. I guess it had, let's just put it this way, it had a reputation, and you'll know more about that in just a moment. And here's the setup for this. We were sitting at a little 4-top table. There were 3 of us. And at the very next table, there were 2 guys. One was wearing a suit, and the other one was wearing this rather distinctive multicolored striped pullover shirt. And he was wearing sunglasses. Now, we're having dinner there. It was a late dinner. We probably got there about, 9:30, 10 o'clock when we were seated. So it was a late dinner. It was pretty late in the evening. We apparently had been in business meetings earlier that day. And so we had a great meal. I don't remember what I had, but I believe it was lasagna. I'm not positive. It's not really germane to this story. But the deal was we had a bit of a delay when the bill came because there was an issue. We all had our meal. I think we had a cream brulee dessert, if I recall. That may not be right, but it doesn't matter. And then we had coffee, which, pretty typical late night meal. And when the bill came, the coffee, for whatever reason, was not on the bill. So we called the waiter over and we were asking him about the, to make sure he didn't get in trouble, had forgotten about it or whatever. Ask him what the deal was on the coffee. And he told us that it was actually complimentary, you know, uh, and that we're good to go. But in the meantime, while we were having that conversation with our waiter, there was a little bit of a delay in between the time that these two guys sitting next to us got up, walked out the front door, and our actual leaving the restaurant. And here's what happened. When we walked out, we exited. If I recall, it was a set of stairs down uh, to the street level. And as we are just kind of looking around on the street, it was relatively dead. Not a lot of traffic, not a lot of people walking back and forth. Because it was late at night. It was probably 11:30 by that time. But we noticed that there was some commotion going on to our right as we were walking out the door. And there, lying in the street, or on the sidewalk rather, on the side of the street, face down, was the guy in the striped shirt that had been sitting next to us in the restaurant. And as we walked over, we thought maybe somebody had fallen or whatever, had an accident, whatever. And there was a couple of people just kind of milling around at that point and starting to look really, really nervous. And as we got closer to this person lying face down in the street, we realized there was blood coming from his head. And it appeared that he had some other wounds as well. And we realized that this guy had been gunned down in the street, dead, not moving. Uh, and of course, the people that were standing there, they were more like bystanders walking by, just obviously drawn by the situation itself. But we also started to hear sirens, police sirens from in a distance, seeming like they were converging on this street. And this restaurant was surrounded by a lot of what I call brownstones. They were, multi-story stone residences, apartments, and there were people that were looking out the windows and pulling down their shades and obviously not wanting to be involved in whatever was about to happen. And eventually, probably within 5 or 10 minutes, as we were standing there trying to see what the outcome was going to be of this, the police came by and they were asking, the bystanders, they asked us if we had seen anything, witnessed anything. And of course we hadn't. And were it not for that little issue that we had, we might have. But the crazy part about all this was, now here we are in business suits, ties, dressed to the nines like a business guy would be in that situation. And John drove a big black Lincoln Town Car that was parked about half a block away on the street. And so we walked over to the town car and got in it. And we were, fully expecting us to be, questioned. And I guess the thing about it was if I was a policeman and there's a guy laying dead in the street and there's three guys in suits and they act like they don't know what's going on, but they walk down and they get in this big black Lincoln and drive away. I mean, I would have thought we would have been at least persons of interest. Glad we weren't, But it was just it was kind of odd. And here's the deal: it was well, it wasn't odd. It was it was weird, is what it was, because here was this guy and gone, and there we were, a matter of probably 45 seconds or a minute away from having walked out, maybe even with them, and witnessed, whatever it was that took place. We had really no idea what had gone on. The date was October the 6th, 1981. And if you're asking yourself, well, how, Tommy, can you be so sure of that? Well, back at the hotel, uh, much like the last episode, I go to bed. I get up the next morning. I'm expecting to see, in the paper, maybe on page 3 or 4, some 1 inch, newspaper article, another shooting on the south side of Philadelphia, blah, blah, blah. No, not really fully understanding the magnitude of what had happened. But that was kind of what I was expecting, because, that was typical, big city, always going to be a shooting. And opened the paper that morning under the door. And this was the article that appeared on page 2, I believe. It said, "The men who have died by the gun." And the subheadline says, "The killings started with the Angelo Bruno execution." I'll show you a little bit more about that first paragraph, though. John Calabrese killing at Christian and Alders Street in South Philadelphia last night was 13 blocks north of where Angelo Bruno was shotgunned 18 months earlier, as he sat in the passenger seat of his car in front of his Snyder Avenue home. With 5 bullets from 2 small caliber revolvers, Calabrese became the 10th gangland slaying victim in a series that began with the death of Bruno, the man reputed to have run the Philadelphia crime family for years. Well, what would you have said? The guy was a Philadelphia mob figure. His name was John Calabrese, and he had his last meal where Angelo Bruno, who was the head of the Philadelphia mob 18 months earlier, had had his last meal prior to him being gunned down in front of his home. This is like a scene out of The Godfather, okay? The story was, and I found this out later, was there was a turf war that was going on between the New York mob and the Philadelphia family mob over who was going to control Atlantic City. The casinos were just starting to kind of come out of the ground. There was, I think, maybe 1 casino in Atlantic City when all this took place, but there were multiple others in the planning stages. And so they were having a little squabble over who was going to control the numbers rackets and the garbage dealings, and the unions that were working or going to work in those casinos. So it was a real turf war, and there was a battle going on. And so that's what happened to Angelo Bruno. He was basically rubbed out because he knew that Philadelphia was supposed to control that Atlantic City territory. And of course the people in New York had a little different idea about it. And that, when I read that article, that's when the realization hit home with me, that had it not been for that little mix-up on the billing on the coffee, we may have been walking out with the victim, and whoever that other guy was had no idea. I don't know if he was, one of the assassins, or if he was just a diversion to make the guy feel comfortable till he got outside. I don't really know. Never heard the actual details of that. But we were, we were lucky. We were lucky. I mean, had we have gone out at the same time, who's to say we wouldn't have been part of them tying up loose ends around the hit that was taking place? I think I recall reading also in the paper that the police department knew this guy Calabrese had a contract out on him for his life, but they didn't know when, and they didn't know where. And I guess, didn't really matter. But I've thought about it that night at Cuz's more times than I can count about, us, I hate to use the pun, but dodging the bullet, as it were. I mean, at first it was just kind of a shock. It was a surreal disbelief, like, we had stumbled into someone else's crime drama. But at the time, I came to realize, something deeper. That coffee bill hiccup, it might have saved our life. A simple delay, something that, frustrates us at some time, might have been somewhat of a divine detour for us, and perhaps what might have happened. And I guess it serves as a perfect reminder that even delays and detours may be divine appointments. Albert Einstein is supposedly credited in saying this. He said, quote, "Coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous." Now, I don't know whether he really said that or not, but, I kind of like the quote. But there's another verse, I'm a Christ follower, and in the book of Proverbs, chapter 16, verse 9, there's a verse that says, "The heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps." In other words, we may think we have a plan, but the Lord is the one that's actually directing our lives and our, synchronizing with his will. So anyway, that's the story. Sticking with it. 1981. It was quite a year. And I'm not going to make all these senior moments quite as dark as this one, but I thought you might like to hear about this this episode called Mobs, Meatballs, and Murder. So, hey, listen, if you haven't already done so, would you subscribe to my channel and hit the notification button? That way you'll get a message when we go live. I try to go live every Sunday. This is episode number 8, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Sunday, if not sooner. And we hope you have a great time and have a great week coming up. Remember, leave a comment if you will, and look forward to reading those. And again, we'll see you next Sunday, 5 p.m. Enjoy your week. Am I signing off too early? Seems like there was something else I was going to say. I don't remember what it was. But happy Father's Day, by the way, all you fathers. Take care. Maybe this is what I forgot. I was supposed to show these. Anyway, y'all have a great one. Take care.